The first two items in our ActionCamera script are optional. Look at target tells the camera where to look. If you drag a game object into this field, then the camera will always orient itself to look at that object. If you leave this field blank, then the camera's view will correspond with whatever orientation you set it up as. Next, ActionCamera is used when you want to transition from the ActionCamera to another ActionCamera. Just drag the ActionCamera you want to transition to and drop it into this field. The transition will occur automatically once this one deactivates. Let's look at the user prefs now. Hide cursor determines whether the player's cursor is visible or not. If you don't want the player to be able to click on anything while the camera is active, you'll want to make sure this option is checked. Camera transition determines how we transition to the ActionCamera when it's activated. Swing will swing our current view to the ActionCamera's view. Cut will instantly change our current view to the ActionCamera's view. And fade will fade out of our current view and then fade back into the ActionCamera's view. RTP transition determines how we transition back to our player. In fact, RTP stands for return to player. The options are cut and fade. If your camera transition is set to swing, then swing time will determine how long it takes to swing to the camera. Turn time is a little bit different than swing time. Swing time affects the camera's position, meaning the camera will swing from the player's position to the ActionCamera's position. But turn time affects the camera's rotation. For example, if you're using a look at target, then turn time will determine how long it takes for the current view to rotate until it's facing the look at target. Turn time is a percentage of the total swing time. So if your turn time is 50%, the camera will be facing the look at target halfway through the swing transition. Fade speed determines how long it takes to fade out of the current view and back into either the ActionCamera's view or the player's view. If you select Use View Duration, then the camera will automatically deactivate after a specific amount of time that you specify in the view duration. When the camera deactivates, the view will return back to the player. Abort key is a key that you can use to exit out of the ActionCamera while it's active. The default is the escape key, but you can change it to whatever you want. Abort tooltip is custom text that will appear on the screen as soon as the camera activates. If you don't want any text to appear on the screen, just leave it blank. Tooltip duration determines how long the abort tooltip text will stay on the screen. The next section is the Do Not Edit section. I recommend not messing with this option unless you know what you're doing, but it determines how the camera moves during a swing transition. Now let's look at the events. Activated happens anytime the camera is activated. Deactivated happens anytime the camera is deactivated. Aborted happens anytime the player uses the abort key while the camera is activated. Viewing started happens at the moment the camera transition has completed. Camera transition black happens immediately after the current view has faded out to black, right before it starts to fade back into the camera. RTP transition black happens immediately after the ActionCamera's view has faded out to black and right before it fades back in on the player. How about a demonstration? I'll create a 3D cube to give the ActionCamera something to look at. I'll position it above the ground and somewhere kind of off in the distance away from Manny. Next, I'll add a pressure plate to the scene, which I'll use to trigger the ActionCamera. You can find the pressure plate in the Toys folder. I'll drop one into my scene and position it just a little bit in front of my character. So when we step on this pressure plate, we want it to trigger our ActionCamera. Alright, the last item I need for this demo is the ActionCamera itself. I'll navigate to the Cameras folder, and then I'll drag the ActionCamera to my scene. I'll position it so that the camera is close to the cube. you can see a blue line which represents the direction the camera is facing. I can use it to orient the camera so that it's looking at the cube, but since I plan on using the cube as a look at target, it's not really necessary, because when I use the cube as a look at target, the camera is going to face it no matter how it's oriented when the game starts. I'm going to set up my scene so that when I step on the pressure plate, it activates the action camera, which will swing our view from the player to the cube. And then after 3 seconds, I'll fade out of the action camera and then back in on my player. Let's start by having the pressure plate activate the camera when it's stepped on. I'll select the pressure plate and then expand the turned on event. I'll drag the action camera to the event and tell it to activate camera. Now let's set up the camera. With the action camera selected, I'll drag the cube to the look at target field. This will force the camera to face the cube. I'm going to set the camera transition to swing and the RTP transition, which is the return player transition, to fade. I'll change the swing time to 7 seconds and I'll set the turn time to 100%. That means it will take 100% of the swing time for the camera view to rotate around and face the look at target, which is our cube. I'll leave the fade speed at 0.5. I'll use view duration and set it for 3 seconds. That means once our swing transition is complete, the camera will remain activated for 3 more seconds, and then it will fade out and then fade back in on our player. Let's check it out.